Have you ever stopped to wonder why your most intimate decisions, your deepest desires, and even the way you spend your money seem to be orchestrated by an invisible force? Why, in the 21st century, with all our supposed freedom and autonomy, do we still find ourselves trapped in behavioral patterns we don't even recognize as our own? The answer might be hidden in something far more subtle and powerful than you imagine. A system of control that operates through the very structures of desire that govern our most intimate relationships. Michel Foucault, the French philosopher, who unveiled the most perverse mechanisms of modern power, warned us that power is not an institution and not a structure. Neither is it a certain strength we are endowed with. It is the name that one attributes to a complex, strategical situation in a particular society. But what if I told you that this strategic situation has evolved into something even more sophisticated? Something that doesn't just control your body or your behavior, but penetrates the very core of your masculine identity, your wallet, and your soul. Tonight, we're going to embark on a journey through the darkest corridors of modern relationship dynamics, where the traditional roles of seduction and conquest have been replaced by something far more insidious, a systematic architecture of psychological manipulation that transforms your deepest vulnerabilities into profitable opportunities for others. This isn't about misogyny or conspiracy theories. This is about understanding how power operates in the most intimate spheres of human existence, and how you've been unknowingly participating in your own subjugation. The modern man walks through life believing he is free, believing his choices are his own, believing that when he opens his wallet for that expensive dinner, that luxury gift, that weekend getaway, he is expressing love, generosity, or simple human connection. But Foucault would look at this man with a mixture of pity and fascination, recognizing in him the perfect subject of what he called disciplinary power, a form of control so complete that the controlled doesn't even recognize the cage. The individual is no doubt the fictitious atom of an ideological representation of society, but he is also a reality fabricated by this specific technology of power that I have called discipline, Foucault observed. And nowhere is this fabrication more evident than in how modern masculinity has been reshaped to serve not the man himself, but a complex economic and social system that profits from his insecurities, his loneliness, and his desperate need for validation. Let's start with something you probably experience every day but never question. The moment you meet someone attractive, that flutter in your chest, that sudden awareness of your appearance, that immediate calculation of how much this interaction might cost you. These aren't natural responses. They're conditioned reflexes, carefully cultivated by a society that has taught you that your worth as a man is directly proportional to your capacity to provide, to spend, to sacrifice your resources for the approval of others. Foucault understood that modern power doesn't work through force or coercion. It works through the production of desire itself. Power produces. It produces reality. It produces domains of objects and rituals of truth, he wrote. The reality being produced here is one where your masculinity is constantly under evaluation, constantly being measured against impossible standards, constantly requiring external validation to feel legitimate, and the ritual of truth, the ritual that proves your worth. It's written in credit card statements and bank transfers. Think about the last time you went on a date. Even before you met, you were already calculating costs, weren't you? The restaurant, the drinks, the Uber rides, the gifts, the activities. Your mind automatically shifted into provider mode. Not because you wanted to be generous, but because you've been trained to believe that this is what makes you valuable. That your worth is measured not by your character, your intelligence, your creativity, or your capacity for genuine connection, but by your willingness and ability to spend money on someone else's comfort and pleasure. This is what I call the economic masculinity trap, and is one of the most sophisticated forms of social control ever devised. It doesn't require guards or prisons or laws. It requires only that you believe, desperately, completely, that your value as a human being depends on your financial utility to others. And this belief has been so thoroughly internalized that you defend it, you perpetuate it, you suffer for it, and you never question whether it serves your own interests or someone else's. But here's where it gets truly diabolical. This system doesn't just extract your resources. It makes you grateful for the extraction. It makes you feel good about being used. It makes you interpret your own exploitation as love, generosity, and masculine virtue. When you spend beyond your means to impress someone, when you go into debt to maintain a lifestyle that serves others more than yourself, when you sacrifice your own goals and dreams to fund someone else's comfort, you don't feel exploited, you feel noble. You feel like a good man. You feel like you're doing what you're supposed to do. Foucault called this phenomenon subjectification, the process by which power shapes not just what you do, but who you are. The subject is constituted through practices of subjection, or, in a more autonomous way, through practices of liberation, he explained. But what happens when the practices you think are liberating, being generous, being a provider, being financially responsible for others, are actually the very mechanisms of your subjection? Consider the modern dating landscape. Every swipe, every match, every conversation is already embedded within an economic framework. The apps themselves profit from your loneliness and desperation. The more unsuccessful you are, the more you pay for premium features, boosts, and super likes. Your emotional vulnerability becomes their revenue stream. And once you do connect with someone, the economic dynamics immediately kick in. The expectation isn't just that you'll pay for the first date. It's that you'll establish yourself as someone willing and able to consistently provide financial benefits. This isn't accidental. This isn't just how dating has always worked. This is a carefully constructed system that benefits everyone except you. The restaurants profit from your desire to impress. The entertainment industry profits from your need to create memorable experiences. The fashion industry profits from your anxiety about your appearance. The gift industry profits from your fear that you're not doing enough. And at the center of it all, you're not seen as a human being with needs, dreams, and vulnerabilities of your own. You're seen as a resource to be extracted from. But the most insidious part of this system is how it makes you complicit in your own exploitation by convincing you that resistance is selfishness. If you question why you're always expected to pay, you're cheap. If you suggest splitting expenses, you're not a real man. If you prioritize your own financial stability over someone else's comfort, you're selfish. The system has created a moral framework where your own self-interest is automatically suspect, where taking care of yourself is a character flaw, where boundaries are signs of inadequacy. Foucault would recognize this immediately as what he called pastoral power, a form of control that operates through care and concern for your moral development. This form of power is salvation-oriented, he wrote. It is oblative as opposed to possessive. It is linked to a production of truth, the truth of the individual himself. The truth being produced here is that good men sacrifice themselves for others. that real masculinity means financial self-sacrifice, that your worth is measured by your willingness to deplete yourself for someone else's benefit. And here's the cruel irony: this system doesn't even produce the outcomes it promises. You're told that being a provider will make you attractive, desirable, loved. But what actually happens? You become useful, not beloved. You become a means to an end, not an end in yourself. You become someone who is valued for what you can do, not for who you are. And the moment you can't or won't provide at the expected level, your value evaporates. This is why so many men feel empty and resentful even in their most generous moments. Deep down, they sense that their generosity isn't being received as an expression of love. It's being received as a service, an obligation, a transaction. They're not being appreciated as human beings. They're being evaluated as service providers. And when the service is no longer needed or wanted, they're discarded with the casual efficiency of someone canceling a subscription. Where there is power, there is resistance, Foucault observed. But what does resistance look like when the power structure has convinced you that resistance itself is moral failure? What does liberation look like when you've been taught that your liberation is someone else's oppression? What does freedom look like when you've been conditioned to see your own boundaries as selfishness? The first step is recognizing that your current patterns of thinking and behaving around money and relationships aren't natural, inevitable, or necessarily serving your best interests. They're learned responses, carefully cultivated by a system that profits from your compliance. The second step is understanding that questioning these patterns isn't selfishness. It's not about becoming callous or manipulative. It's about becoming conscious. Consider this: when you automatically reach for your wallet, when you automatically assume financial responsibility, when you automatically prioritize someone else's comfort over your own financial security, whose interests are you really serving? Are you expressing genuine care and affection, or are you performing a script that was written for you by others? Are you making choices that align with your values and goals, or are you following patterns that were designed to benefit everyone except you? Foucault understood that freedom is not liberation, but the possibility of liberation. Your freedom doesn't come from rejecting all generosity or all financial contribution to relationships. It comes from making conscious choices about when, how, and why you choose to be generous. It comes from understanding the difference between generosity that flows from abundance and love, and generosity that flows from fear and conditioning. Real masculine power, the kind that actually serves you and the people you care about, isn't about how much you can spend or sacrifice. It's about how consciously you can choose. It's about having the awareness to recognize when you're being manipulated and the strength to resist that manipulation. It's about building relationships based on mutual appreciation rather than economic utility. It's about creating a life where your value isn't contingent on your wallet balance. This means learning to say no when saying yes would compromise your own well-being. It means establishing boundaries around your time, energy, and resources that reflect your actual priorities rather than society's expectations. It means choosing partners who value you for who you are rather than what you can provide. It means building a sense of self-worth that doesn't depend on external validation or financial performance. But here's what makes this truly challenging. The system will fight back. When you start setting boundaries, when you start questioning expectations, when you start prioritizing your own financial health, you'll be met with resistance. You'll be called selfish, cheap, unloving. You'll be told you're not a real man. You'll be made to feel guilty for taking care of yourself. This isn't accidental. It's how the system maintains itself. It's how it keeps you compliant. Foucault warned us that liberty is a practice. It's not a state you achieve once and then maintain effortlessly. It's something you have to actively choose, again and again, in the face of constant pressure to conform. It's something you have to defend, not just from external forces, but from your own internalized programming. The men who break free from this system aren't the ones who become misogynistic or manipulative. They're the ones who become genuinely selective. They learn to distinguish between people who appreciate them and people who use them. They learn to build relationships based on mutual value rather than one-sided provision. They learn to be generous from a place of choice rather than compulsion. And here's what's remarkable. When you stop operating from scarcity and fear, when you stop trying to buy affection and approval, when you stop measuring your worth by your financial utility, you actually become more attractive, not less. People are drawn to confidence, to boundaries, to someone who values themselves enough to make conscious choices about their resources. You stop attracting people who see you as a resource to be exploited, and you start attracting people who see you as a human being to be appreciated. But this transformation requires something most men have never been taught: the ability to tolerate other people's disappointment in your boundaries, the ability to let someone be upset that you won't play the role they want you to play, the ability to prioritize your own well-being, even when others are pressuring you to sacrifice it. This isn't cruelty, it's self-respect. And self-respect is the foundation of any healthy relationship. The care of the self is the care of the self as a political subject, Foucault wrote. Taking care of yourself, financially, emotionally, psychologically, isn't selfish individualism. It's a political act. It's a refusal to participate in a system that reduces you to your economic utility. It's a declaration that your life, your goals, your dreams, and your resources matter as much as anyone else's. So here's my challenge to you for the next week. Pay attention to every financial decision you make in the context of relationships. Notice when you automatically reach for your wallet. Notice when you feel obligated to spend money to prove your worth. Notice when you prioritize someone else's comfort over your own financial security. Notice when you feel guilty for taking care of your own interests. Don't judge these patterns, just observe them. Start to recognize the difference between generosity that comes from genuine care and generosity that comes from fear, conditioning, and the need for approval. Start to see how the system operates in your own life, how it shapes your choices, how it profits from your compliance, and then, slowly, carefully, consciously, start making different choices. Start saying no when yes would compromise your well-being. Start building relationships with people who value you for who you are, not what you can provide. Start creating a life where your worth isn't measured by your willingness to sacrifice yourself for others. This isn't about becoming selfish or cold. It's about becoming free. It's about understanding that your life, your dreams, your resources, and your future matter. It's about refusing to participate in a system that sees you as nothing more than a wallet with legs. It's about discovering what it means to be truly generous, not from fear and conditioning, but from abundance and choice. The Secret Women's Pact isn't a conspiracy, it's a system that benefits from your unconsciousness, your compliance, your willingness to sacrifice yourself for others' approval. But systems can be changed, patterns can be broken, freedom can be chosen. The question is, are you ready to choose it? Are you ready to see through the illusions that have been keeping you trapped? Are you ready to build a life where your value isn't contingent on your wallet balance? Where your relationships are based on mutual appreciation rather than economic utility? Where your generosity comes from strength rather than fear? Because on the other side of this recognition, on the other side of this awakening, on the other side of this conscious choice to value yourself as much as you value others, lies a kind of freedom that most men never experience. The freedom to be truly generous because you choose to be, not because you have to be. The freedom to build relationships based on genuine connection rather than economic transaction. The freedom to live a life that serves your deepest values rather than society's expectations. This is what Foucault meant when he spoke of liberation. Not the absence of all constraints, but the conscious choice of which constraints to accept and which to reject. Not the elimination of all relationships, but the cultivation of relationships that honor your full humanity. Not the end of generosity, but the beginning of generosity that comes from freedom rather than fear. The system wants you to believe that you have no choice, that these patterns are natural and inevitable, that questioning them makes you a bad person, but you do have a choice. You can choose consciousness over conditioning. You can choose self-respect over self-sacrifice. You can choose freedom over fear. The only question is, what will you choose?